My wife insisted on separate finances. I just found out she's been secretly rich this whole time. My wife has been secretly wealthy our entire marriage while watching me go into debt to afford our lifestyle. I found out 3 days ago when I accidentally saw her bank balance, and now our marriage is over. But somehow I'm the villain in this story. I'm 33 years old, and I thought I had a pretty good marriage. My wife Claire and I met 7 years ago at a friend's birthday party. She was working as a middle school art teacher. I was an assistant manager at a sporting goods store. We hit it off immediately, started dating, and got married after a year. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony with close friends and family at a local park. We couldn't afford anything elaborate, or so I thought. From the beginning, Claire was very clear about finances. She wanted to keep everything separate. Her money was hers, my money was mine, and we'd split all shared expenses 50-50. She said she'd seen too many relationships fall apart over money and wanted to make sure we kept things fair and independent. I thought it was a little unusual, but also kind of mature and practical. We were both working, both contributing. Why not keep it simple? So that's what we did. We got a joint account that we each deposited into for rent, utilities, and groceries. Everything else stayed separate. If we went out to dinner, we split the check. If we bought furniture, we each paid half. If we took a vacation, every expense was divided down the middle. Claire kept a running spreadsheet of who owed what to keep everything perfectly even. Looking back now, I should have seen the red flags, but I was in love and I trusted her completely. The first few years were fine. We lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment, nothing fancy but comfortable. My salary at the sporting goods store was around $42,000 a year. Claire said she made about the same as a teacher. Our rent was $1,600 a month, so $800 each. Utilities averaged around $150, so $75 each. Groceries were maybe $400 a month, $200 each. It was tight for me, but manageable. Then 3 years ago, Claire started talking about upgrading our lifestyle. She said we'd been responsible long enough and deserved to enjoy life a little. She found a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a much nicer neighborhood. The rent was $2,800 a month. I panicked when she showed it to me. $1,400 a month was way more than I could comfortably afford. I told her that, and she seemed surprised. She thought we were doing well financially. Wasn't I making more money now? I'd gotten a promotion to store manager, so yes, I was making a bit more money, about $51,000 a year now. But after taxes, that $1,400 rent would eat up most of my paycheck. Claire says she really wanted this apartment. She'd always dreamed of having a home office, and the second bedroom was perfect. She promised we'd cut back in other areas to make it work. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We moved in, and I immediately felt the financial strain. My half of rent and utilities was now $1,500 a month. That left me with maybe $1,900 for everything else. Car payment, insurance, gas, food, student loans, phone, and anything else that came up. I started eating a lot of ramen and pasta. Stopped going out with friends because I couldn't afford it. Put off buying new clothes even though my work pants had holes in them. Claire didn't seem to be struggling though. She always looked put together, had her nails done, got her hair colored regularly. When I mentioned I was finding things tight financially, she said she was too. She'd just gotten better at budgeting and finding deals. She suggested I try meal prepping and shopping at discount stores. I was already doing both. About 2 years ago, Claire wanted to get a new car. Her sedan was 10 years old, and she said it was time for an upgrade. She found a nice SUV, nothing crazy expensive, but nice. The monthly payment would be $470. She proposed we split it since we'd both use the car, $235 each. I said I couldn't afford that. I was already barely making ends meet. Claire seemed frustrated. She said couples were supposed to compromise and support each other's needs. Her car was becoming unreliable and she needed something safe. Was I really going to let her drive around in a dangerous vehicle to save $200 a month? I felt terrible. She was right that her car was old. I didn't want her to be unsafe. So I agreed to split the payment, even though I had no idea how I would manage it. I picked up extra shifts at work, started doing weekend inventory that paid a little overtime, cut my grocery budget even more, started skipping lunch at work to save money. I lost weight because I literally couldn't afford to eat enough food. When Claire noticed and commented on it, I joked that I was finally getting in shape. She said I looked good and should keep it up. That hurt looking back. I was losing weight from malnutrition and financial stress, and she thought it was an intentional fitness journey. The car payment started coming out my account, and I watched my savings disappear. I'd had about $3,000 saved up for emergencies. Within 6 months, it was gone. Then I started carrying a balance on my credit card for the first time in my life. Just small amounts at first, $100 here and there when I came up short on gas money or my half of the electric bill. But it grew. After a year of the car payments, I was $4,000 in credit card debt. I felt ashamed. I'm the man. I'm supposed to be able to provide. I'm supposed to be able to afford my half of our expenses without drowning. What was wrong with me? Why couldn't I budget better like Claire seemed to be able to do? I didn't tell her about the debt. I was too embarrassed. Then last year, Claire wanted to start taking nicer vacations. We'd always done budget trips, camping or road trips to visit family. She wanted to go to beach resorts in European cities. She found a trip to Portugal that looked amazing. The total cost was $6,000, $3,000 each. I nearly had a heart attack. I told her there was no possible way I could afford that. Claire got quiet and said she was disappointed. She'd been working so hard and felt like she deserved a real vacation. All her friends took nice trips with their partners. She felt like we were stuck while everyone else was moving forward with their lives. She wasn't asking for anything crazy, just one nice trip after years of being responsible. I felt like the worst husband in the world for holding her back. I did something I'm not proud of. I took out a personal loan, $3,000 at a terrible interest rate because my credit score had dropped from carrying the credit card balance. But I didn't want to disappoint Claire. I didn't want her to resent me for keeping her from experiences she deserved. So I borrowed the money and we went to Portugal. The trip was beautiful. Claire was so happy, taking pictures of everything, trying all the local food, buying souvenirs. We stayed in nice hotels and ate at good restaurants, always splitting every bill exactly down the middle. I smiled and pretended to enjoy it while internally panicking about the debt I was accumulating. Every meal out was another $30 I didn't have. Every museum ticket was another $15 on my credit card. When we got home, Claire immediately started talking about where we should go next year. Maybe Italy or Greece. I made non-committal noises and changed the subject. I was now $7,000 in credit card debt and had a personal loan of $3,000. The monthly payments were crushing me. I was working every available hour, eating one meal a day, and lying awake at night doing math in my head trying to figure out how to survive. I developed a stress-related stomach problem, started getting sharp pains that would double me over at work. I knew I should see a doctor, but I couldn't afford the copay or time off work. I took over-the-counter antacids and told myself it would get better once I paid down some debt. 6 months ago, things got worse. Claire wanted to redo our bedroom. New bed frame, new mattress, new dresser, new everything. She showed me a furniture set she loved. Total cost, $4,800. My half, $2,400. I couldn't do it. I finally broke down and told her I couldn't afford it, that I was struggling financially and couldn't take on any more expenses. Claire looked genuinely surprised. She asked how I could be struggling when I made decent money and we split everything fairly. I explained that my salary just didn't stretch far enough to cover my half of everything plus my own expenses. She asked, what expenses? I listed them. Car payment, insurance, gas, phone, student loans, medical costs, personal items. She nodded slowly and said she had those expenses too and managed fine. Maybe I needed to look at where my money was actually going. Was I spending on things I wasn't telling her about? The implication stung. She was suggesting I was wasting money somehow, being irresponsible. I told her I tracked every penny and was barely surviving. She said maybe we should sit down and look at my budget together to find the problem. I agreed, hoping she'd see that I wasn't being careless, I was just genuinely struggling. We never had that budget meeting. Every time I brought it up, Claire was too busy or too tired. Eventually, I stopped asking. She dropped the bedroom furniture idea, which was a relief, but she seemed disappointed in me. like I had let her out somehow. 3 days ago, everything changed. Claire and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. Her phone was on the coffee table, and a notification popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but it was right there in my line of sight. A banking app notification. Your available balance is $478,000, 632 and 18 cents. I stared at that number, read it again. $478,000. That couldn't be right. Maybe it was a glitch or showing the wrong currency or I'd misread it. I glanced at Claire. She was focused on the TV, hadn't noticed the notification. My mind was racing. That couldn't be her account. We'd been scraping by. She had been complaining about money being tight. She was a middle school art teacher making maybe $45,000 a year. Where would she have nearly $500,000? I couldn't focus on the show. My heart was pounding. After about 20 minutes, Claire got up to go to the bathroom. The second she left the room, I grabbed her phone. I know that's a violation of privacy. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to understand what I'd seen. Her phone wasn't locked. She never bothered with security at home. I opened the banking app. My hands were shaking. The account balance loaded. $478,000, $632.18. Checking account. I scrolled through the transaction history with growing horror. Regular deposits. Not teacher salary deposits of maybe $3,000 every 2 weeks. No. Monthly deposits of $8,500 every single month like clockwork. I scrolled back. Years of these deposits. I clicked on one to see the source. Trust distribution. Whitmore Family Trust. Trust fund. Claire had a trust fund. I kept scrolling, seeing her spending. $200 dinners that I thought we'd split when I put in my half. She just kept my money and paid with her own too. Spa days, shopping. A storage unit I didn't know about costing $215 a month. In her name only. I heard the bathroom door open and quickly put her phone back, my mind spinning. Claire came back and settled next to me on the couch. I looked at her like I was seeing a stranger. This woman who I'd been married to for 6 years, who I'd gone into debt for, who I'd starved myself physically and financially while sitting on $500,000. I couldn't say anything right then. I was in shock. I got up, mumbled something about not feeling well, and went to our bedroom. I lay in the dark, trying to process what I'd learned. Nothing made sense. Why would she hide this? Why would she let me struggle? We were married. We were supposed to be a team. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Claire, listening to her breathe peacefully while my mind raced through every financial struggle of the past 6 years, every skipped meal, every declined invitation to friends' events because I couldn't afford it, every time I'd walked instead of driving to save gas money, every medical issue I'd ignored because I couldn't afford the copay, all while my wife had almost $500,000 in her bank account. The next morning, Saturday, I got up early. Claire slept in like she usually did on weekends. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, the one we'd split the cost of 3 years ago. I'd paid $275 for my half, money I'd put on a credit card. I wondered how much that $275 had actually cost me with interest. Probably close to $400 by now. When Claire came out around 9, she found me at the table with my laptop open. I'd been looking at our joint account statements, cross-referencing them with my own bank records, documenting every split expense for 6 years. The number I'd come up with made me feel sick. I'd paid roughly $193,000 into our shared life over 6 years. Claire had paid the same. But for me, that had required going into debt, destroying my health, and sacrificing any quality of life. For her, it had barely made a dent in her trust fund balance. "Morning," she said, heading to the coffee pot. "You're up early. What are you working on?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her haircut that cost $120 every 6 weeks. Her manicured nails. Her designer athletic wear that she'd mentioned finding on sale. Everything I'd believed about our financial situation had been a lie. "I saw your bank notification yesterday," I said quietly. She froze with the coffee pot in her hand, just for a second. Then she carefully poured her coffee and turned around. What notification? Your checking account balance, $478,000. She didn't say anything, just stood there holding her coffee mug, her face unreadable. How long have you been wealthy? I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, emotionless. I think I was still in shock. Claire came and sat down across from me at the table. She looked uncomfortable, but not particularly guilty. It's not like I've been lying exactly. I just kept my financial situation private. Private. I repeated the word. You kept it private while I went into $10,000 of debt trying to pay for half of a lifestyle I couldn't afford? You're in debt? How? I thought you made decent money. I do make decent money for a normal lifestyle. Not for this. I gestured around our expensive apartment. Not for $200 dinners and trips to Portugal, and a car payment for a vehicle that's primarily yours. We split everything equally, Claire said defensively. I never ask you to pay more than your share. Your share is from a trust fund that deposits $8,500 into your account every month. My share is from a salary of $51,000 a year before taxes. Those aren't the same thing, Claire. How did you not see that I was struggling? She looked down at her coffee. I thought you were managing. You never said it was this bad. I told you 6 months ago I couldn't afford the bedroom furniture. I told you I was struggling financially. You suggested I was spending money on things I wasn't telling you about. I didn't know you were in debt, she said quietly. You should have told me it was that serious. I felt anger rising, cutting through the shock. Why would I tell you the details of my financial problems when you never told me you had $500,000? We're supposed to be married, Claire. We're supposed to be partners. Instead, you've been treating our entire relationship like some kind of experiment. That's not fair, Claire said, her voice rising. I kept my finances separate because I've seen what happens when people find out about money. People change. They become entitled. They expect you to pay for everything. I wanted to make sure you loved me for me, not for my family's money. So this was a test. I could hear my voice getting louder. You've been testing me for 6 years, watching me suffer to make sure I was worthy? I wasn't watching you suffer. You never told me it was this bad. How was I supposed to know? I stood up, knocking my chair back. Maybe by being a normal spouse who shares important information. Maybe by noticing that your husband lost 10 pounds because he was barely eating. Maybe by wondering why I stopped seeing friends or doing anything that cost money. I noticed you lost weight and you said you were getting in shape. You always seemed happy on our trips. How was I supposed to read your mind? You weren't supposed to read my mind. You were supposed to be honest with me. I grabbed my laptop and turned it toward her. Look at this. $193,000. That's what I've paid into our life together over 6 years. Do you know what that's cost me? I have $7,000 in credit card debt at 21% interest, a $3,000 personal loan. I have a stomach ulcer from stress that I haven't gotten treated because I can't afford the medical bills. I've been living on probably 1,200 calories a day because that's all I can afford after all our shared expenses. And you've been sitting on $500,000 watching this happen because you wanted to test my character? Claire's face had gone pale. I didn't know about the debt or the medical issues. You hid that from me. I hid it because I was ashamed, because I felt like a failure as a husband for not being able to afford my half of the life you wanted. And the whole time you could have solved this with a single conversation, one honest conversation about the fact that you're wealthy and we didn't need to split everything 50-50. But you didn't have that conversation because your suffering was more valuable to you as a loyalty test than my well-being was as your husband. That's not fair, Claire said, tears forming in her eyes. I love you. I needed to know you loved me for the right reasons. My mom always told me to be careful, that people would use me for money. I've seen it happen to my cousins. I was protecting myself. You were protecting yourself, I repeated slowly. From your husband. The person you married. The person who's supposed to be your teammate? You are protecting yourself from me. Can you blame me? Claire asked. You hear stories all the time about people who marry for money. I wanted a real partnership, not someone who saw me as a bank account.
I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. And did I? In 6 years of marriage, did I ever ask you for money? Did I ever expect you to pay for things? Did I ever try to access your accounts or question your spending? No, she admitted quietly. I paid exactly half of everything every single time, even when it destroyed my financially. I went into debt to take you on vacation. I've been slowly starving myself to afford our rent. At what point did I pass your test, Claire? When was I going to be deemed worthy enough to be trusted with the truth? She didn't answer. Or was there ever going to be an answer? Was this just going to go on forever? Were you going to watch me drown financially for the rest of our marriage, always holding back this massive secret, always keeping me at arm's length? I was going to tell you eventually, she said, when I felt secure enough, when I knew for sure. Knew for sure what? That you wouldn't change, that you wouldn't start expecting me to pay for everything, that our relationship wouldn't become about money. I looked at her and felt something break inside me. This wasn't the woman I thought I married. Or maybe it was, and I just had never really seen her clearly. Our relationship has always been about money, Claire. You just didn't see it because for you, money was never a problem. But for me, money has dictated every single decision I've made for 6 years. What I eat, where I go, what I wear, whether I see a doctor, whether I can afford to have friends, every aspect of my life has been controlled by trying to keep up with the lifestyle you wanted while pretending I could afford it. And you had the power to change that at any time but chose not to because you were more concerned about protecting your money than protecting me as your husband. That's not fair, she whispered. What's not fair is watching your spouse struggle and doing nothing about it. What's not fair is having the resources to help and choosing to withhold them as some kind of character evaluation. What's not fair is building a marriage on secrecy and pretending it's about equality.
We stood there in silence. Claire was crying now, but I felt nothing. I was empty. 6 years of my life suddenly looked completely different. Every memory was tainted. Every struggle that I thought we were facing together, I had actually been facing alone. She'd never been in the trenches with me. She'd been watching from a position of complete financial security while I fought for survival. "What do you want me to say?" Claire finally asked. "I made a mistake. I should have told you. I'm sorry. Can we move past this?" "Move past it?" I stared at her. "Claire, you let me go into debt. You let me develop medical problems. You watched me sacrifice my health and well-being because you needed to prove I wasn't a gold digger. How do I move past that? I didn't let you do anything. You made your own choices. I never forced you to agree to split expenses." "You're right," I said slowly. "You never forced me. You just neglected to mention that you didn't need me to, that we could have easily afforded for you to pay more, that there were other options. That's not force. That's just deception." "I want to fix this," Claire said. "Tell me how to fix this. Do you want me to pay off your debt? I can do that right now. I can transfer money to you, whatever you need." The offer made me feel sick. "You think this is about money? You think you can just pay off my debt and everything's fine? Isn't it?" She looked genuinely confused. "You're upset about the financial struggle. I can fix the financial struggle. Isn't that what you want?" "What I want is a wife who sees me as an equal partner worth protecting, not a charity case or a test subject. What I want is a marriage built on honesty and trust. What I want is to not feel like I've been performing in some elaborate experiment for the past 6 years. Claire wiped her eyes. "You're being dramatic. Lots of people keep finances separate in marriages. This isn't that different. It's completely different, and you know it. Keeping finances separate while both people know the full picture is one thing. Keeping your wealth secret while your spouse drowns financially is something else entirely." "So what are you saying?" Her voice had an edge now. "You want a divorce because I didn't tell you about my trust fund? That seems pretty extreme." I looked at her and realized I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the woman I thought I married. Or maybe it was, and I just had never really seen her clearly. "I want a divorce because you fundamentally deceived me about who you are and what our marriage was. Because you watched me suffer and did nothing. Because apparently your money has always been more important than my well-being. Because I don't trust you anymore." "Over money," she said flatly. "You're leaving me over money.
I'm leaving you over trust, over honesty, over the fact that you treated our marriage like a test I had to pass rather than a partnership we were building together." Claire's expression hardened. "Fine, if that's what you want, but don't expect me to make this easy for you, and don't expect people to understand. When this gets out, everyone's going to know you left me right after finding out about my trust fund. You know how that's going to look." The threat was clear. She was going to control the narrative, make me look like the gold digger she'd been so worried about. Even though I was the one leaving, even though I was the one who'd been deceived, she was already planning to paint me as the villain. "Let them think whatever they want," I said tiredly. "I know the truth. That's enough." It wasn't enough, though. I found that out over the next few days. I moved out that same day, packed my clothes and essentials, and went to stay with my friend Marcus, who had a spare room. I couldn't afford my own place, not with my debt. Claire kept the apartment, of course. She could easily afford it alone.
By Monday morning, my phone was blowing up. Messages from mutual friends, people from Claire's family, even some of my own relatives. All variations of the same theme. How could I do this to her? Claire's sister sent me a long text about what a terrible person I was for abandoning Claire over something so petty. Her best friend called me a gold digger who couldn't handle a successful woman. My own mother called, saying she'd heard I left Claire and was I having some kind of crisis? I called my mom back to explain. She listened to the whole story, then said, "Honey, I understand you're hurt, but Claire was just being careful. Women with money have to protect themselves. You can't really blame her for that." She watched me go into debt, Mom, for 6 years. Well, you're a grown man. You should have spoken up sooner if you were struggling. She's not a mind reader. I hung up, feeling even more isolated. Even my own mother was taking Claire's side. I tried to explain to Marcus what had happened. He was more sympathetic, but still seemed confused about why this was such a big deal. "Look, man, I get that it sucks she didn't tell you," he said, handing me a beer as we sat in his living room. "But she's offering to pay off your debt, right? That's like 10 grand of problems just solved. Why not take the money, work through the trust issues, and come out ahead?" "Because it's not about the money," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "It's about the fact that she lied to me for our entire relationship." "She didn't lie, exactly. She just didn't tell you something. That's different." "Is it?" Marcus shrugged. "I mean, I don't tell my girlfriend everything about my finances either. It's kind of personal." I realized then that no one was going to understand. The fundamental violation I felt, the betrayal of watching someone you love struggle when you have the power to help them and choosing not to, that was something people couldn't grasp if they hadn't lived it. They saw a man leaving his wife after discovering she had money. The optics were terrible. The reality didn't matter. Work was awkward. I was distracted, exhausted from stress and not sleeping. My boss pulled me aside on Tuesday and asked if everything was okay. I gave a vague answer about personal issues. By Wednesday, someone had clearly told someone else because I overheard 2 coworkers talking in the break room. "Did you hear about Jeff? Left his wife because she has a trust fund? Can you imagine being that insecure? I heard she was hiding it to test him and he failed. Pretty gross that he's mad she has money." I didn't correct them. What was the point? Thursday, I got an email from a divorce attorney Claire had hired. Very expensive, very aggressive. The email outlined her position. She wanted a clean 50-50 split of all marital assets accumulated during the marriage. Since we'd kept finances separate, this basically meant splitting the value of the furniture and household items we'd bought together. Maybe $3,000 worth of stuff total. Her trust fund wasn't marital property since she'd had it before the marriage and kept it completely separate. The email also noted that Claire would be seeking legal fees from me as the party who initiated the divorce without cause. Her attorney estimated this would be around $8,000. I read that email 3 times. She was going to make me pay her legal fees? I was already $10,000 in debt and she was going to make me pay another $8,000 because I had the audacity to divorce her after she had deceived me for 6 years. I called a divorce attorney myself. The consultation cost $250 I didn't have and went on my credit card. The attorney, a tired-looking woman in her 50s named Patricia, listened to my story and took notes. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "This is going to be difficult," she said bluntly. "From a legal perspective, your wife did nothing wrong. She's allowed to keep her finances private. There's no law requiring spouses to disclose their assets unless there's an issue of fraud or hiding marital property. A trust fund she had before marriage isn't marital property. What about the fact that she let me go into debt? She didn't force you to go into debt. You made financial decisions as an adult. She's not legally responsible for managing your finances. So she can just watch me drown, and that's fine?" Patricia's expression softened. "Morally, no, it's not fine. What she did was cruel and manipulative, but legally, she's protected. And if she pursues legal fees, a judge might actually award them to you since you're the one filing and she hasn't done anything legally actionable." This is insane. "Welcome to divorce law," Patricia said dryly. "My advice? Try to settle this quickly and quietly. Don't fight over the household items, split them however she wants. The longer this drags out, the more expensive it gets. And you can't afford expensive. She can. So she wins. In the legal sense, yes. She has the resources to drag this out indefinitely if she wants to. You don't. Sometimes the person with more money wins just by attrition." I left that consultation feeling defeated. I couldn't afford to hire Patricia at $350 an hour. I ended up going with a cheaper attorney I found online, a guy named Richard who worked out of a strip mall office and charged $175 an hour. He wasn't impressive, but he was what I could afford. Over the next 3 weeks, Claire's narrative solidified in our social circle. She was the victim of a gold digger husband who pretended to love her but left the moment she found out about her money. She'd been smart to keep her finances private and had dodged a bullet. Several mutual friends unfriended me on social media. Claire's family sent me hostile messages. Even some of my own extended family seemed to think I was in the wrong. My aunt called me and said, "I always thought you were smarter than this, Jeffrey. You had a good woman and you threw it away because of pride. Man and their egos, I swear." It wasn't about ego, Aunt Marie. She lied to me for 6 years. She protected herself. There's a difference. When you get older, you'll understand. I wanted to scream. No one was listening. They all heard, "Husband leaves wife after finding out she's rich," and made up their minds immediately. The context didn't matter, the debt didn't matter, the deception didn't matter. I was the bad guy. End of story. The only person who seemed to fully understand was my friend from college. He called me after hearing through the grapevine what was happening. "That's gaslighting, man. She's literally rewriting history to make herself the victim when she's the one who deceived you. That's textbook manipulation. Try telling that to anyone else. Screw everyone else. You know the truth. That has to be enough." But it wasn't enough. I was drowning in debt, living on a friend's couch, working a job where everyone thought I was a gold digger, and going through a divorce I couldn't afford. The truth felt meaningless in the face of all that. By late October, 6 weeks after I'd left, my debt had grown to almost $13,000. The divorce attorney fees, moving costs, having to replace basic necessities I'd left behind, it all added up. I was eating ramen again, but this time in Marcus's apartment instead of my own. At least before, I'd been slowly destroying my health in service to a marriage I believed in. Now I was just broken alone. Claire sent me a settlement offer through her attorney. She'd keep the apartment and all its contents, I'd walk away with nothing, and we'd each pay our own legal fees. In exchange, she wanted me to sign a non-disparagement agreement. I couldn't talk about her finances or our marriage to anyone. If I violated it, I'd owe her $50,000 in damages. She was trying to buy my silence, make sure I could never tell anyone what had really happened. My attorney, Richard, advised me to take it. He said, "You've got no assets to fight over anyway, and if you don't take this, she'll drag it out. Could take a year, cost you another 10 or 15 grand in legal fees. You'd still end up with nothing, just more debt. This way, you're out now, clean break, and you can rebuild." She wins everything. She already won. She has the money. You're just deciding how much more you want to lose fighting a battle you can't win. I signed the agreement. Hated myself for it, but signed it. The divorce was finalized the first week of November. 6 years of marriage ended with me walking away with nothing but debt and trauma. The week after the divorce finalized, I saw on social media that Claire had gone to Paris with her friends. The photos showed her at expensive restaurants, designer shopping, looking radiant and free. One caption read, "Finally taking the trip I've always deserved. New chapter." And all the comments were supportive. "You're glowing. He didn't deserve you. His loss." I closed the app and looked around Marcus's spare room. My possessions fit in 3 boxes and 2 suitcases. I was 33 years old, living like a college student, buried in debt, and legally unable to even explain to people what had actually happened. That night, I had a panic attack. Full-blown, couldn't breathe, thought I was dying. Marcus drove me to the ER, 5 hours and a $1,200 bill I couldn't pay. Later, the doctor told me it was stress and anxiety. Prescribed medication I also couldn't afford. Suggested therapy. I laughed. With what money?
November was rock bottom. I was depressed, anxious, broke, and isolated. Stopped returning most calls and texts. Stopped posting on social media because every time I did, someone would make a passive-aggressive comment about gold diggers or men who can't handle successful women. I started having intrusive thoughts about how much easier everything would be if I just didn't exist anymore. That scared me enough to finally reach out to a free mental health clinic. Started seeing a therapist named Dr. Chen once a week on a sliding scale. I paid $15 per session, which was still hard to afford, but I knew I needed help. Dr. Chen was the first person who seemed to really understand the scope of what had happened. Financial abuse, she said in our 3rd session. That's what this was. She had power and resources and used them to control and manipulate you. The fact that it was through withholding rather than direct action doesn't make it less abusive. Everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. Everyone doesn't have all the information, and you're legally prevented from giving it to them. That's another layer of control she's exerting. Hearing someone finally validate what I'd experienced made me break down crying in her office. 6 years of gaslighting myself, wondering if I was overreacting, wondering if everyone else was right and I was just being dramatic. Having a professional tell me that no, my reaction was appropriate, that what happened was genuinely harmful, it was like finally being able to breathe. "What do I do now?" I asked her. "You rebuild. It won't be fast and it won't be easy, but you're out of the situation. That's the hardest part. Now you get to build a life based on honesty, starting with being honest with yourself about what you need and deserve." I started working on that. Made a debt repayment plan, strict budget, picked up extra hours at work, started applying for better paying jobs, began the slow process of trying to repair my credit score and financial situation. It was going to take years to dig out of the hole I was in, but at least now I was digging.
December came and I was still living with Marcus, but I'd started to feel like maybe I could survive this. I'd paid off $500 of my debt. It was a tiny dent, but it was something. Dr. Chen helped me reframe things. Instead of thinking about the $13,000 I still owed, I focused on the $500 I'd paid. Small victories. Then 2 days before Christmas, everything got worse. I got a message on LinkedIn from someone I didn't know, a woman named Rebecca Chen, no relation to my therapist. The message said, "Hi Jeff. I'm a journalist working on a story about financial dynamics in modern marriages. I heard about your situation with your ex-wife and would love to interview you. I think your story could help a lot of people understand financial abuse in relationships. Would you be willing to talk?" My first instinct was to delete it. The non-disparagement agreement meant I legally couldn't talk about Claire or the marriage. But I was curious how this journalist had even heard about it. I responded asking where she'd gotten her information. Rebecca replied, "Your ex-wife's family is well known in social circles here. The story of your divorce has been circulating as a cautionary tale about gold diggers. But someone close to the situation reached out to me and said the real story was very different. They thought it deserved to be told." Someone close to the situation. I racked my brain trying to figure out who that could be. Most mutual friends had sided with Claire. My family wasn't involved enough to know details. Then it hit me. Maybe Claire's sister Emily. Emily had been friendly to me during the marriage and had seemed uncomfortable at family events since the divorce. Maybe she'd seen through Claire's version of events. I told Rebecca I couldn't speak to her because of a legal agreement. She said she understood, and that she'd already spoken to other sources. She was moving forward with the story regardless. Did I want the chance to have my perspective included? Or would I rather let everyone else define what happened? I thought about it for 2 days. Technically, if Rebecca published a story and I wasn't the source of the information about Claire's finances, I hadn't violated the agreement. But commenting on it, even confirming facts, felt risky. I called my divorce attorney, Richard. "Don't do it," he said immediately. "Any participation in a story about your marriage could be construed as disparagement. She'd sue you for the 50 grand. And you don't have it. Stay silent." I stayed silent. The article published on January 4th. I didn't see it at first because I'd been avoiding most media and social platforms. Marcus texted me a link with, "Dude, you need to see this." The headline read, "The Hidden Cost of Secret Wealth. One woman's test left her husband buried in debt." The article didn't use our real names, called us Sarah and Tom, but anyone who knew us would recognize the story. It laid out everything: the separate finances, the expensive lifestyle, the trust fund, my debt, the medical issues I developed. It included quotes from sources close to the couple about how I had lost weight, worked constantly, and seemed stressed for years, while Claire maintained an expensive appearance. The article framed it exactly as it was: financial abuse through deception. It quoted financial advisors and therapists about the dynamics of financial power in relationships and how withholding information could be a form of control. It mentioned the non-disparagement agreement and how that itself was another form of control, preventing the victim from telling their story. The comment section was split. Some people sympathized with me, saying what Claire did was cruel. Others said I was a grown man responsible for my own finances and shouldn't have agreed to split costs I couldn't afford. A few said the whole thing was probably made up for clicks. My phone started ringing within hours. Claire's attorney called threatening a lawsuit. I had an answer. Her attorney left a voicemail saying they were investigating whether I'd been a source for the article, and if so, I'd be in breach of contract. Friends and acquaintances started reaching out, some apologetic, some angry, all demanding to know if the article was about us. I didn't respond to anyone. Richard called and told me not to confirm or deny anything about the article. Let them prove you were the source. If you weren't, they can't touch you. The weird thing was, the article changed some people's minds, but made others double down. My Aunt Marie called and said the article made her rethink her earlier judgment. She apologized for not listening. My mother, on the other hand, said the article was clearly a hit piece, and I should be ashamed if I'd participated in it. I told her I hadn't, that a journalist had investigated and written it independently. She didn't believe me. Claire apparently had a meltdown, according to Marcus, who heard it from a mutual friend. She was furious that her private business was being discussed publicly. She felt violated and betrayed. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd spent 6 years violating my trust and autonomy, but a truthful article about the situation was where she drew the line. Her family went on the offensive. They started their own narrative campaign, posting on social media about privacy and journalistic ethics. They called the article defamatory and threatened to sue the publication. The publication stood by the story, stating all facts had been verified through multiple sources and documentation. One unexpected consequence: I started getting messages from other people, mostly men, who had experienced something similar. Spouses who hid in wealth or income, partners who had watched them struggle financially while having resources to help. One guy told me his wife of 10 years had a rental property worth $300,000 he only learned about during divorce proceedings. Another said his ex-husband had an inheritance of over $1 million he'd kept secret, all while they'd been supposedly struggling together to make ends meet. I realized I wasn't alone. This was a pattern. People use money as a test, as a control mechanism, as a way to maintain power in relationships. And the victims often stayed silent because, like me, they were either legally prevented from talking or too ashamed to admit what had happened.
By mid-January, the story had mostly blown over in our social circle, but the damage to Claire's reputation was done. People whispered about her at social events according to the few mutual friends still in contact with me. Some sided with her interpretation that she'd been protecting herself. Others saw it as I did, as a betrayal of her spouse. Her family closed ranks around her, but the perfect image had been tarnished. I wish I could say that vindicated me, but it didn't. I was still broke, still in debt, still damaged from the experience. The article hadn't changed my material circumstances at all. While still sleeping on Marcus's couch, still working overtime to pay off debt, still going to therapy to deal with the trauma. In February, something shifted. I got called in for an interview at a competitor to my current company. Better position, significant pay increase. During the interview, the hiring manager mentioned he'd read an article about financial abuse in marriages that had really resonated with him. He didn't say it was my story specifically, but the way he looked at me, I knew he'd connected the dots. I didn't confirm anything. I got the job. $68,000 a year, nearly $20,000 more than I was making. I gave notice at the sporting goods store and started the new position in March. The extra income meant I could finally afford my own place. Nothing fancy, a studio apartment in an older building, but it was mine. I moved out of Marcus's place in April with overwhelming gratitude for his hospitality and a promise to pay forward the kindness someday. For the first time in years, I could breathe financially. I made an aggressive debt payoff plan. With my increased salary and careful budgeting, I could pay off everything in 18 months if I stayed disciplined. I stopped eating out entirely, packed lunches, kept my social life minimal. But this time, I was sacrificing for my own future. Not to keep up appearances in a fraudulent marriage, that made all the difference. Dr. Chen and I worked through a lot in therapy. The betrayal, the gaslighting, the way I'd internalized blame for financial struggles that weren't entirely my fault. We talked about how I'd ignored red flags because I loved Claire and wanted to trust her. How I'd made myself smaller and smaller, physically and emotionally, to fit into a relationship that was never equal. You're going to have trust issues in your next relationship. That's normal. The key is finding someone who understands that trust has to be earned and maintained, not demanded, as a default. I told her, I don't think I want a next relationship. Not for a long time. That's healthy. Take time to rebuild yourself first. You can't have a healthy partnership if you're still healing from an unhealthy one. I took her advice. Focused on work, therapy, debt repayment, and rebuilding my physical health. Started eating properly again, going to the gym, getting regular checkups. Treated the stomach problems that had plagued me for years. It was amazing what a difference financial stability made in every aspect of life. By summer, I'd paid off half my debt. $7,000 down, $6,000 to go. I was on track to be completely debt-free by Christmas. I also reconnected with some old friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage. People I'd stopped seeing because I couldn't afford to do anything social. They welcomed me back without judgment, and slowly my social life rebuilt.
In August, almost a year after the divorce, I ran into Claire. Literally ran into her at a coffee shop downtown. We both froze, staring at each other in the line. She looked the same, polished, well-dressed, perfect hair and nails. I probably looked different. I'd gained back the weight I'd lost, had color in my face again, didn't have the permanent stress lines I'd developed during our marriage. "Jeff," she said quietly. "Hi." "Claire." Awkward silence. The barista called for the next customer, and Claire stepped forward to order. I stayed in line behind her, my heart pounding. I hadn't seen her since I'd moved out almost a year ago, hadn't spoken to her since the divorce finalized, and I found I had nothing to say. She got her coffee and turned back to me. "Can we talk for a minute?" Every instinct told me to say no, but curiosity won. We sat at a corner table, two strangers who used to be married, holding overpriced coffees and avoiding eye contact. "I read the article," Claire said finally. "I know you said you didn't contribute to it, but I read it, and I've been thinking about it a lot." I didn't respond, just waited. "I didn't see it that way at the time," she continued. "The money thing. I really did think I was just being careful, protecting myself. My family drilled it into me that people would use me for money, and I was so scared of that happening. But reading it laid out like that, seeing how it affected you, I didn't realize. Or maybe I didn't want to realize. You didn't want to know, I said. It wasn't a question. I could have asked more questions, could have paid attention to signs. You're right about that. I chose not to see because it was easier. Why are you telling me this now? Claire looked down at her coffee. Because I'm in therapy. Have been since February. My therapist helped me understand some things about control and fear and how I've been managing relationships my whole life. And I owe you an apology. A real one, not the defensive ones I gave you when you left. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of release. Okay? I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry I deceived you. I'm sorry I watched you struggle and convinced myself it wasn't my responsibility to help. I'm sorry I valued protecting my money over protecting you. You deserved better. You deserved honesty and partnership, and I didn't give you that. The words I'd wanted to hear a year ago, now they felt empty. Too late. Thank you for saying that. I'm not asking for anything, Claire added quickly. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, nothing. I just needed you to hear that I understand now. What I did was wrong. The article was right. I was financially abusive, even if I didn't intend it that way. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, I hope therapy helps you. I mean that genuinely. I hope you figure out how to have honest relationships in the future. Are you okay financially and everything? I'm getting there. It's been hard, but I'm climbing out. She nodded. I thought about offering to pay off your debt back when the divorce was happening, but my attorney said it would look like admission of wrongdoing and could complicate things legally. Your attorney was protecting your interests. That's what attorneys do. I should have protected your interests. That's what wives are supposed to do. I stood up. This conversation was over. Hearing her regrets didn't change the past year of hell I'd gone through. I need to go. Take care of yourself, Claire. You too, Jeff. I really am sorry. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. Went home to my small studio apartment and sat on my secondhand couch and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no vindication from her apology. Just emptiness where all those feelings used to be. Dr. Chen said that was progress. You've processed it enough that seeing her doesn't re-traumatize you. That's huge growth. By December, 1 year and 3 months after I discovered Claire's bank balance, I made my final debt payment. $13,000 paid off. I was free. No credit card debt, no personal loan, nothing. I sat in my apartment looking at the zero balance on my accounts and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. My credit score was still recovering. I didn't have much savings. I was living in a tiny apartment and driving a 14-year-old car. But for the first time since I'd met Claire, my financial situation was stable and honest. I knew exactly where I stood. No secrets, no hidden tasks, no gaslighting myself about whether I was managing well enough. January of the new year, I got a message from Emily, Claire's sister. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. The message said, I was the source for that article. I thought you should know. What Claire did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at that message for a long time. Emily had been the anonymous source. She told the journalist everything, given them enough information to write the story without my involvement. She'd broken family ranks to tell the truth. I wrote back, "Thank you. That took courage. I'm doing better now." She responded, "Good. You deserved better than what my sister gave you. I hope your next chapter is happier." My next chapter. I was 35 now, single, starting completely over. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I married Claire at 27, thinking we'd build something together. But it was honest. And after 6 years of deception, honest felt like enough. I'm still in therapy, still rebuilding, still learning how to trust people again. Dr. Chen says I'm making excellent progress. Some days I believe her. Other days, I wonder if I'll ever be able to be vulnerable in a relationship again without waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I'm here. I survived. I got out, and I'm building a life where money doesn't have power over me anymore, where I'm not performing for anyone's tests, where I'm enough exactly as I am. That's my story. The year I discovered my wife had been secretly wealthy while watching me drown. The year I learned that sometimes love isn't enough when it's built on lies. The year I lost everything and somehow found myself again. If anyone reading this is in a similar situation, feeling like they're struggling alone while their partner seems fine, trust your instincts. Ask questions. Demand honesty. Don't accept separate finances as an excuse for secrecy. Real partnership means transparency, especially about things that affect both of your lives. And if you discovered you've been deceived the way I was, know that leaving doesn't make you a gold digger or a failure. It makes you someone who values honesty and refuses to accept abuse even when it's subtle, even when everyone tells you you're overreacting, even when it costs you everything. Sometimes, walking away with nothing is better than staying with everything built on lies.